We're going to start with trust, and I wanted to just have this at the beginning of the whole of the core content here, because this is really at the foundation of the whole customer-centric model. And some of you may have seen this already or seen versions of this already, but when we talk about trust, we're specifically talking about the three components of it being character, competence, and common sense of purpose. And the way I would look at this is, and when you're doing consults, the customer is not going to enroll with you if there's a lack of trust. And if the lack of trust can come if any one of these, it's almost like a three-legged table where if any one of these are missing, that trust is just not going to be there. And it's when you think about anyone that you trust on any for any task, this can be task specific, it usually means that all three are there. So you may trust someone fully to give you great life advice. It doesn't mean that you trust that same person to repair your car. You may trust their character, that they really, they're a good person, common sense of purpose. They want to fix your car. They would love to, get everything up and running for you, but their competence, may not necessarily be there. Flip side of that would be for a lot of, auto mechanics, you may fully believe their competence, is there, but if for some reason you think they might overcharge you, for it, just, if you don't know car repair, like I don't know car repair, if that's that's a concern, that's a common sense of purpose concern, that we're not in it for the same, reasons. And then character, throws a wrench in the whole thing as well. So when you're doing a customer-centric consultation, what you're building is all three aspects of these, and each part of it plays a different role in it. So what we're going to talk about today in terms of the opening relationship phase, there's a lot of character built. As throughout the consultation, as you gather needs, that's a very common sense of purpose, focused area. Presenting Tutor Doctor as this credible premier service, there's a competence component to show how you're going to solve problems. But we're going to keep referencing back to this. So I wanted to just start with this to, so you understood these three components of character, competence, common sense of purpose. So now getting into the opening relationship stage. So this encompasses from the core principles that all of you have been introduced to, this encompasses core principles 1, 2, and 3. So that's always be face-to-face, whether it's virtually or in person with the client student, taking ownership over the client journey, and then the relationship building being intentional and based on substance and authenticity. So it's a real relationship building, and you're going to see examples of that in the consult that we're going to share in a little bit here. So what this does is it really sets that foundation for character right at the beginning. And when doing this effectively, part of what you want to have happen is that client should feel a sense of control in the process. They trust you as a guide. It's almost like if you're a pilot and you're taking them you're flying them to London. You both know where, like they know where they want to get to. They just don't know exactly how to ultimately get there. So they should feel in control of where they're going, but with you as the guy to ultimately get them there, and they should trust you, ultimately as a guide. And that's, from that ownership over the prospect journey component of it. So this is the first of the three components. So one, the prospect should feel, so what does it mean to have ownership over the prospect journey? So that prospect should feel that personal attention from first contact onward. They should feel, that like you're present, that you are paying attention to them, that you care about solving their needs that they called in for. However you structure the journey, it should fit their needs and urgency. There's some prospects who call in who need immediate help, and it's a more, urgent situation than others who feel a general sense of, the student falling behind. And, the prospect journey should fit that. And then regardless of whether they become a customer, so even if they don't end up enrolling, part of having ownership over the prospect journey is they should have a positive trust building experience with Tutor Doctor. Like everyone becomes you know, and I think prospect net promoter is almost as important as, you know, customer, you know, net promoter, particularly in very, you know, when like parents talk to each other, you know, overall on that. So, and then part of taking ownership over the prospect journey is the prospect should understand the agenda for the consult, basic ground rules of engagement, and then potential ways that the meeting would end. Like they should know what's going to happen in the consult. What are some potential, you know, closings for the meeting? So what I want a question for all of you, how can you place yourself in that role? So that the role of a guide that I'm describing, how can you place you, if it's not in person, which if it's in person, you know, unless you're turned around with your chair, with your back facing the client advisor, you're probably going to be face-to-face if you're going to be in person. If not in person, doing consults using, you know, face-to-face virtual platform on Zoom, Bramble, any, like somehow being able to see the prospect is far more impactful than otherwise. Frank, I see, you know, we've changed over the last 2 years. That what you said there, Sally, I think 3 years ago, Zoom consults would be much tougher. That you would have to do everything in person. And I think there's just a comfort level now where people understand or are able to use it widely. So there's really not a good reason to not do the in person. You know, you can feel like the convenience of somebody calling in. You know that, you know, I think, and I don't know, Mark, I know there were still some phone consults that were happening, you know, overall. So just if you ever have the option, face to face, what it allows you to do is, you know, you can use body language. There's something to be said for, and you'll see that in the consult that we're gonna play today. And I almost, you know, if we had more time, I would almost play Sally's consult off just audio only for a bit. We try audio only, and then you know, see the video portion of it. And it's such a difference when you can, you know, interact with the person and, you know, use body language appropriately to build trust. When possible, involve the student, regardless of the format, whether it's virtual or in person. You know, that's the other thing, is students are also more comfortable with Zoom at this point, since almost all students have experienced some type of, you know, virtual learning. But you can have them join in on the consult too. And there's just a trust building component that happens there as well. So question, how does a consult change when it happens face-to-face? And it sounds like then all of you are using Zoom and doing this face-to-face, but what changes when you're able to see the prospect versus just doing it on the phone?
You're just able to build that connection so much better.
For sure. How do you build that connection? Like, how does it do it better?
Just have eye contact as a start, and just being natural.
Yeah.
Really.
For sure. Eye contact, smiling. You can see, you know, Sally does a great job in the consults picking up the emotions of the, you know, you can just, and we'll see it on the example consult of, like, you know, some of the body language cues and, you know, being able to engage the student that way. Any other thoughts on this one? So the last component, so the relationship building is intentional, it's substantive, and authentic. So, and that's with both the prospects and students. So the relationship in a customer-centric consult should be established with both prospect and student. The rapport based on meaningful topics. We won't do a deep dive on that right now, but we've referenced before, like form, like the family, occupation, recreation, mission, like hitting on key topics that matter to the prospect. You've shared your story. It's a two-way like by nature, relationship building is two-way. So you've shared your story, your passion for education, and then you've sought to understand what matters to the client. And ultimately, the prospect, their trust in your character, competence, sense of common purpose should increase with that relationship building. So the question, how do you, it's kind of a loaded term on saying of the relationship building being authentic. How can you ensure that that relationship building is authentic.